This might be the greatest handheld I've ever held in my hand. It's a combination of the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 and the brand new Microsoft Xbox licensed Nacon MG-X Pro. And this device uses Bluetooth 4.2 LE as opposed to a USB-C connection. And I know some of you will be thinking this is a deal breaker because of the potential of latency, aka input lag. And honestly, at this point in time, I don't know what the latency is on this device, but we will find out in this video. And check this out, I skimmed through a bunch of scientific papers about Bluetooth 4.2 LE connections, and the truth is, the Bluetooth chip inside the Nacon MG-X Pro has the potential to send a packet of data in just 3 milliseconds. And just to give you some perspective on this, a professional gaming controller that's wired to a console will have an input latency of around 3 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds. And an Xbox Series X controller, a wireless one, will actually have an input latency of around 50 milliseconds. So we'll see where this stacks up against those. But of course, there are many variables and parameters that could change the input response time. For example, the RF environment around you, the distance that your device is from the controller itself, also the device you're using and the refresh rate you're playing games at. All of these things can affect the input lag. And I've come up with a little method to measure the input lag on the MG-X Pro, which I think you guys will find interesting. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video to see that little experiment. But first, let me give you guys a guided tour around the Nacon MG-X professional telescopic bit of gaming kit. And I did make an in-depth review about the non-pro version of this, and there's a bunch of stuff that I really love about it, but there's some things that needed improving. For example, the analog triggers work well, but felt like there was a kind of rubber bubble behind them as opposed to a spring. The thumbsticks sit close to the body, which is nice, but it does mean that making precision adjustments is sometimes a little tedious. And the thumb rests bulge outwards, and I much prefer thumbsticks that curve inwards. And due to the low profile design of the non-pro version, the palm grips are inherently thinner than a typical gaming controller. So if you were to put a very expensive phone into it, whilst it would be perfectly safe thanks to the surprisingly firm grip that it has, you might still have a little bit of fear in the back of your mind that you might drop it. And as you probably know, fear is the path to the dark side. But if you go pro, all of these concerns are addressed. They have analog triggers just like the non-pro version, except they have way more travel and much improved springs. The sticks are taller and therefore you can make more precise movements with them, and the thumb rests are concave, meaning they curve inwards, allowing your thumbs to rest on them more comfortably, and the grips are elongated and almost identical to the shape of an actual official Xbox controller. And there's also a nice honeycomb grippy texture on the back, thus reducing the fear of dropping it. And I will say, this is the most comfortable gaming peripheral for an Android phone that I've ever used. And because the MG-X Pro is quite a bit bulkier than the original unit, the ABXY buttons are larger and they're actually the exact same size as an official Xbox controller's buttons. And the fact that it's modeled on an Xbox controller means that all of the button placements and branding on the buttons are virtually identical too, with a couple of differences being the addition of the Bluetooth pairing button and a couple of LED light indicators to let you know when it's on, when it's connected, when it's charging, when it's in pairing mode, and when it's running out of battery. So when it comes to actually using this, I did try to pair it to an iOS device. Just doesn't work, unfortunately. Hopefully Nacon will make an iOS version of this in the future. But at this point in time, it's specifically for Android. It can house devices with a height of up to 14 centimeters. So in theory, this could hold a small tablet. The only concern would be if the tablet's a little bit top heavy, you might be constantly worried about it flipping forwards and out of the grip. But this is actually quite unlikely to happen because of a couple of design features Nacon have added. So if you look closely, the way in which it clamps onto the device and hooks around the left and right edges keeps it in place and will stop it from flipping backwards. And the rubber backing grips the back of your device nicely and stops it from sliding out. And you can see I'm quite confident to have this upside down and not worry about it sliding out of the grip. That shows you how good that backing is at gripping devices. So that means you can pretty much use any Android device with this, with pretty much any case, as long as it's not ridiculously chunky. And as you can see here, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 is the perfect partner for this grip. Qualcomm Snapdragon 888, 120Hz on a Super AMOLED screen, 12GB of RAM. These two devices together equal maybe one of the best gaming handhelds ever, especially when you've got really fast data speeds like 5G or Wi-Fi, because you can play Xbox Game Pass games or Stadia or GeForce Now. And if you do want to play offline, of course, you've got a bunch of Android games that will work with this controller too. And for those games that don't work natively, you can always get a third-party app to map the buttons on the controller to pretty much any game you want. You definitely want to get a couple of emulators on your device, and I made a video about my top 5 emulators in 2022 for Android phones. Definitely check that out at the end of this video. My personal favorite emulator at the moment is the Dolphin emulator, because it can emulate Nintendo Wii and Nintendo GameCube games, some of which you can't even get on the Nintendo Switch at the moment. For example, Mario Strikers. Anyway, let's talk about the battery life on the MG-X Pro. It has 20 hours of power. It charges via a USB-C and go from 0 to 100% battery in just 2 hours. And Nacon do provide a really good quality USB-C charging cable in the box. And I've been using this device for a couple of weeks now, and I find gaming on this so comfortable. I actually lost a few hours playing Gears of War 4 when this first arrived. All the buttons feel like they're in the right place. The D-pad is very close to the original Xbox controller D-pad when it comes to its tactile feel. This truly is a really nice bit of kit in my opinion. And now it's time to test the input lag. So I just want to thank you guys for making it this far into the video. I'm going to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes of this experiment. So what I've got right here is a Sony ZV-1, and this is going to be shooting 240 frames per second at this, the Galaxy Z Fold 3 with the MG-X Pro. The A button is pass within this game, Super Mario Strikers. What we'll do is we'll record it in 240 frames per second, then import it over here onto Adobe Premiere, and that way we'll be able to count the frames. And each frame of the footage will be approximately 4.16 milliseconds. So we should be able to calculate and get a final number when it comes to input response times from the MG-X Pro. Okay, now I've imported the footage onto Adobe Premiere, and you can see I've set it into frame format. So these numbers down here are the amount of frames. We've got 65 frames in total. So all we need to do now is find the in point and the out point, and then we should be able to figure out how many milliseconds the input lag is. So let's go. So I push the button about there. That is exactly where the button is pushed. So we'll set a marker there. And now we'll scrub through to find where Mario kicks the ball. And he begins the movement there. So we've got a total of 23 frames. Alexa, what is 23 times 4.16?
23 times 4.16 is 95.68.
So there we go, the input response time is around 95 milliseconds on this particular game. Different games will vary depending on if you're cloud streaming them or if they're actually on the device, if they're actually made for the device. That might help as well. I just wanted to show you Mario Strikers because I've been playing this game so much. If you guys want to check out the emulator to run this, there's a thumbnail on screen right now. I appreciate you guys. If you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. And I'll see you guys in the next one, so don't be late.